if you've mastered the basic stocking and want to add a little pieced interest to your stocking, a diagonal stripe stocking is a great option. And I'm going to show you how to get this front part pieced, and then you just assemble the stocking in the same way. So what you want to do is to cut a piece of either batting, interfacing, or some sort of foundation fabric like muslin that is larger than your stocking template, and trace your stocking template onto the piece. Now this will be the front of your stocking, fabric side up, so make sure you've got the toe pointed in the direction you want to. And then I draw, using the 45-degree line on my ruler, a diagonal line just to get me started. And all you need to piece the front of this is one 3-inch wide by width of fabric strip of each of your 3 fabrics. So what you want to do is take your first fabric strip and position it along that 45-degree line, right side up, and make sure that it extends past the stocking line on both sides, which is easy for this one. You have to pay a little more attention with your second strip. Your second strip will go on top, right sides together, and here's where you want to double check. We're going to stitch along this line and fold it open. So you want to make sure that you've got enough hanging off of this edge that it will go past the edge of our stocking right here. So once you've got that positioned in place, you can put a couple pins in to hold it, and then head over to your machine and stitch with a 1/4-inch seam allowance through all 3 layers, your 2 strips and the batting underneath. Another place that stocking shape comes in handy is you don't have to stitch all the way to the edges of your foundation. You can just stitch just a little bit past those lines, because that's all we're going to end up with ultimately. So I'm going to head over to my ironing station, and I'm going to press that top strip open. You want to make sure that you have it all the way open, there's not any overlap. There we go. Now then, what I like to do, just to make it easier to handle, is check where my line is and then trim off the strips, because we'll be using them again in a minute, and just getting them out of the way makes it easier. So at this point you can choose to either work towards the top of the stocking or down towards the toe. Whichever you don't do first, we'll do next. So I'm going to work towards the top of my stocking. I'm going to position this next strip in place, double check that I'll be covering the lines, and pin it, and then stitch with a 1/4-inch seam allowance from the outside of the stocking shape to outside of the stocking shape. Okay, I've got that next piece added on. I'm going to bring it over to my iron. Press it open, nice and flat, and then I'm going to cut off the excess once again, and then take one of my scrap strips from before, and I'm going to put that into this corner. I'm actually this time just going to trim in advance, because that piece is long and kind of in the way. So I'm going to pin this and stitch it over. It looks like it will make it just covering my corner. Then I'm going to press that corner open. Okay, and you can see mine did just cover that corner. If for some reason, based on where your strips start, your corner is not covered, just add an additional piece so that you've got your stocking shape covered all of the way. Then I'm going to rotate this, and so my next color would be red. And I'm going to position my red piece on top, double check that I'll be covering the seam allowance, pin in place, and then stitch. And I will keep doing that with the strips until I've covered the whole stocking template. So once you've finished piecing the whole stocking area on your foundation backing, you can quilt it or you can leave it as is. You've basically just done a little quilt as you go quilting because you've been attaching the layers together as you've sewed those strips on. I personally like to do a little 1/4 inch line on both sides of each seam because I like how it looks. I just like the way that it gives a little bit more of a finished appearance to the stocking. So whether you choose to quilt it or not, the next step after that is to cut out your stocking shape. You want to take your template and align it on, make sure it's with the toe going the way you want it to, and align it on your pieced strips. You want to make sure that it, you know, right here it's close, but I'm good right there. Make sure that the paper template is all the way on your fabric, and then either pin it in place and cut it out, or draw a line around the outside of your template and then cut on that line. And from that point you've got your stocking front, so you just need to cut a stocking back out of your selected fabric. Make sure that it is opposite of your front so that they fit together, and then continue on with the assembly directions that I shared earlier. Another variation you can do for your stocking is to make it patchworky by sewing squares together. What I did for this one is I cut a 3-inch wide strip from each of my 3 fabrics and then cut that strip into 3-inch squares. You'll need to lay them out in a pattern that creates a piece that is larger than our stocking template. So with 3-inch squares, you want that to be 4 squares across by 7 squares down. And then on the side with your toe, you'll need an additional 2 squares in that last row to make it fit. So you want to get your pieces lined up in the order you want them, and then sew each row of squares together. And after you do that, you're going to join the rows together. What you want to do with your seams is alternate the direction that you press the seams in each row. So for example, in this top row, I would press my seams to the right, and in the second row, I would press them to the left, and continue alternating. That way, when you join your rows, your seams will nest, and you'll end up with nice matching corners like I've got here. Once you have all these pieces sewn together, similar to the diagonal stripe, you can do some quilting on it. Put it on a piece of either batting, fusible batting, or fusible interfacing, and then quilt it however you'd like. I did, again, the 1/4 inch lines from each of my seam allowances in both directions, so I have a bit of a checkerboard look here. And then after that, your next step would be to lay the template down on your pieced front and make sure that it's positioned in such a way that the entire stocking fits on your pieced front, and then either cut it out or trace it and then cut it out and put your stocking together in the same way.